But if Jesus travelled or returned to the east, surely there would be legends, like those in the south of France, to support the idea. And of course, there are such traditions. In fact, the people here in Kashmir call their tribe Ben-e-Israel and claim to be descendants of the lost tribes. And here there are stories that in the 1st century, Isa, known locally as Yusasaf, meaning leader of the healed, returned to Kashmir in his 30s. Yusasaf's ministry here can easily be seen as a continuation of the Jesus ministry. In a local temple called the Temple of Solomon, there used to be an inscription which told of Yusasaf's claim, made about 50 AD, to be Jesus, the prophet from Israel.
तमाम कश्मीर की तारीखों में यही लिखा है कि ये बाहर से आया है, ये प्रॉफिट था, ये पैगंबर था और इस्राइल से आया, नस्बैन से अंदर बॉर्डर में आया है और फिर यही तबलीग कर रहा है। वही जीसस है, वही मसीह भी है, क्योंकि यूज़ असद के माने हैं जो कोड़ी के मर्ज़ में हूँ उनको शिफा देने वाला, उनका इलाज करने वाला, जो शिफा याब हुए उसको यूज़ असद के दूसरे माने हैं कि यूज़ असद के दूसरे माने हैं जमा करने वाला।
Yusasaf continued to teach and to preach in Kashmir until he died around the year 80 AD. He was buried in Srinagar. And this rather modest building is, they say, his tomb. The first shrine erected around the site was built in 112 AD. In fact, it is now a shared gravesite. In the 15th century, the Islamic holy man Syed Nazir-ud-Din was also buried here. Although both the gravestones under the cloth point north-south in the Islamic tradition, the body of Yusasaf is buried beneath in a grave dug east-west in the Jewish tradition. But this is a sacred site, and short of exhumation, there is no way of discovering whether the body buried here is that of a man who once survived crucifixion. However, next to the sarcophagus are the carved footprints of Yusasaf, and they do have marks or scars on them.
अच्छी उम्र में ये फोत हो गया है और उसके पाँव के निशानात का पत्थर पर उन्होंने कुंदा कर रखे हैं, जैसे कि थे वैसे ही रखे हैं निशान के तौर पर। उनमें ज़ख्मों के निशानात बिल्कुल साफ नज़र आते हैं, जो सलीब पर चढ़ाने की वजह से उनके पाँव में ज़ख्म आए थे।
The position of the scars, just behind the toes, do not match each other, but they would align if a single nail was driven through both feet with the left foot placed on top of the right. There are many who believe this to be the tomb of Jesus. If this is the tomb of Jesus, then he spent most of his life in the mountain kingdom of Kashmir. He did not die on the cross. There was no resurrection. He did not ascend into heaven, and he does not sit at the right hand of God. For many Christians, this would be the end of Christianity as we know it. For some, the original story would still have the power to comfort us as we approach death.
For me, the resurrection is about death. The two things that will happen to us all in our life is that we'll be born and that we'll die. They're the two things we know nothing about. And we have this great void before and we have this great void afterwards. So in Jesus' resurrection at the end of the Easter story is the symbolism of our own resurrection, of our own new life. That in many ways is the great strength of Christianity, and I think to kind of get away from it, to get away from that incredibly powerful symbolism of the resurrection that touches each and every one of us because of the reality of what will happen to us, and start debating whether, you know, bones in a tomb matter or whether it actually happened, completely misses the point of Christianity.
But for some theologians, the story of the resurrection is little more than a witness to the grief felt by the disciples at the loss of their leader.
My own working assumption is that Jesus' followers were scattered and discouraged, as they said, and that some of them became convinced that he was actually alive. I don't know how that happened, but certainly it does happen, even today, that many people with a sudden or not sudden loss, bereavement, become convinced that the person that they thought they had lost is somehow alive. And that conviction apparently was very powerful for some of these people, and then it spread.
For others, the resurrection is purely a symbol of the continuing power of Jesus, summed up in the experience of the two disciples who had not recognized the risen Jesus until he broke bread with them.
And their eyes were opened, and they knew him.
The person who wrote that was not trying to describe an apparition. It would be like a preacher on Easter Sunday saying Jesus is among us this morning, and you don't expect people to go looking under the seats for where is he? They understand. It's the presence of Jesus they're describing. In one sense, it's a perversion of resurrection to reduce it to a body coming out of the tomb. Do you not believe? And it's bad history, not just bad theology.